For this assignment, you probably want to look up Goya, Francisco Goya, and Aquatints, because that his work and Aquatints in general inform kind of like the inspiration for this project. So, real quickly, what an Aquatint is so if you're printmaking, the way you get the print out of the metal plate, so in terms of etching, is you're going to scratch into the metal plate with a needle point. And I have one here. So this is, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got it's a tip, so it scratches metal. And so what you do is you would scratch into a plate, and then you do a line with it, and then you would ink up your plate, and ink would settle into that line. You'd wipe all the ink off, and so the ink wouldn't be on the surface anymore. It'd be in the plate, and then when you run your plate and your paper through a press, you pull off your paper, and then whatever line you had here would be here on your paper. So that's an etching. Aquatint is kind of, you get this gray kind of tone in there, and so if you want the tone to be darker, you would hit it with finer dots, leaving the acid bath longer. It would etch these little pits into the plate, and then so you would get kind of a dot pattern. So what we're gonna be doing is, so for the line, we're gonna use pen, and for like the grays in here, instead of doing an Aquatint, we're gonna use spray paint. So and then the next thing would be if you wanted like these white parts. So if this was an Aquatint, what you do would you would have the gray go over it, and then you come back. You get the gray go over the whole thing, and come back with the burnisher, and that kind of smooths out the surface of the metal. And so you just make these white parts smoother, and so when you ink it, the ink would settle into these little holes, but it wouldn't settle into where it's flat. So, so that's what we're gonna do for this one. So this one is kind of so here's an example of this technique. So it's first drawn in pen, right? Black pen, and hatching, cross hatching, you kind of get basic shading, and then it's hit with spray paint, and then when the spray paint's dry, it's come back in with white paint. So I'll just go over that project again. So here we are, the Goya. So you're gonna learn how to pull and push by adding value and space to a crosshatch pen drawing. So pull, there'd be details coming out. Push would be kind of making space fall back. Assignments to make a line drawing with a black ink on white background. So using your pen, do a pen drawing, shade it. Spray a thin translucent layer of black spray paint over the entire drawing. So it's kind of like a wash. So you're gonna see the drawing through all the spray paint. You're not gonna put it on super thick. You don't want it you don't want to black it out. You just want to have it kind of gray. And then you work back into the drawing with either more ink, like if you need more darks, or with white paint if you need highlights. So real quick about the supplies. So you can use any pen. So I'm gonna use this pen, a regular Bic pen. You have microns, you can use those. The 05 pen, that would work, or even the brush one, that would work. And then I have this. This is a water-based spray paint. You don't need to use this one in particular, but you do need to use a spray paint. I'm using this one because I'm doing the demo inside of my studio, and this one doesn't have any smell, so I can spray it indoors. So that's why I'm gonna use that one. But the one I recommend you guys get is Quick Color. So this is at Home Depot. This one is flat black. So matte flat black works better, I feel like, than glossy black, but if for some reason they don't have flat, you get glossy, it'll still work. It's not really that big of a deal. But I like matte because you can layer over it a lot easier. But this one, Quick Color, this, like I said, is from Home Depot. This one is, I believe, 98 cents. So it's the cheapest one. And you're not going to use a whole lot of spray paint. I think these run maybe about 6 or 7. So yeah, so find this one. If you can't go to a Home Depot, and I think Walmart has dollar cans too. But any black spray paint will work if you have any kind of spray paint laying around. So, all right, so let's get into the drawing part. So again, this is an example, and you can see there's some gray tones, some white for highlights, right? So it's that's what we're gonna end up doing. So I kind of sketched out one of my chicks, my baby chicken. So this one is Hal. And so with the pen, you know, you're going to want to do, you know, all your shading, or I'm going to do all my shading in this on just with hatching or cross hatching or solid shading. So if I start with the eye here, I'm going to, this would probably be the most solid part. So I could start pretty dark with this. But if I want it darker, I could press a little harder or layer it with different lines. So to get its like fuzziness, I'm not gonna do lines. I kind of hold these edges. I'm gonna like kind of make up this edge kind of with like a bunch of lines or like a bunch of dashes. So, and she has kind of a mohawk on her, and like these parts are really dark. So I could go in and kind of put those in real quick. And I think, so this photo is probably, I don't know, I want to say she was only like a few weeks old when I took this photo. I think she's probably about 5 or 6 weeks now. So she's still pretty young, but they grow like really fast. So she even looks a lot different from like now than she did from this photo. So, and like her fro is gonna grow in a lot. And so it's gonna get bigger and bigger that you won't even be able to see her face in a little while, because like these feathers around like underneath her beak, like those will kind of start to fill in too. So this is kind of documenting her face while we could still see it. So, but yeah, and you notice I'm doing my lines pretty much in the same direction, like kind of top to bottom right now. But then when I get out to like maybe these edges, they come in more of like from left to right, like horizontally, or they kind of change direction and kind of feel out the form. Like if you think of like the cross contour assignment, that would be when we did the stripes. Kind of the marks go with the form, so they kind of change a little bit depending on which way the form is bending or like the feathers are bending. And so you might want to do value scales with this too. You could do the simple project of shading your sphere. You could do that with this just to get a handle on using a pen. I like these kind of ballpoint pens because they have, they're like pressure sensitive. So depending on your pressure, you could get lighter lines versus darker lines here, right? So, but yeah, you get some really soft tones with this. So I like this one. The ones in the kit that you have, the pen 05 and the brush, those will work really good. Those are like a lot darker than this, so they'll probably hold up better with the spray paint. Because like what could end up happening if you do this too light, your spray paint will be darker and it'll overpower kind of the detail you do with the pen. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm doing this, to either let off a little bit on the spray paint so it doesn't get too dark, or just go heavier on the pen so it could compete with like the black of the spray paint. Because this is going down, but it's really kind of like gray, and the spray paint will just be black. So, but get our beak in there. So it's the same thing as when you do like the pencil shading. You want to have strong edges, but you don't want to just have lines showing those edges, right? So if you do have a heavy line, you want to bring some value off of it so it transitions off. And so like for these edges, again, I don't draw a line going with it, like to show the edge. Instead, I do a collection of lines, like a bunch of little short lines, like almost like dashes. So it has like this like kind of fuzzy feel that chicks have, you know, before their fuzz really like turns to like more feather-like texture. It's more like hairy texture. And so in the description, I talk about pull and push. So if you kind of like put in some grays over an area, right now, like this is kind of like pushing this area back. But if I need to pull out an edge, right, details, this is like more pull. Like the edge of this beak, how it's darker, like that's a pull. Right. And so most of this project is drawing with the pen. The spray paint is just like really quick. It's like very minimal compared, like in terms of like how much time goes into it, and then also like how much work you put in. Like most of the work is gonna be with the pen. So a lot of your shading, your modeling, that's all gonna be with the pen. And when I have large areas to do like this whole thing is supposed to be darker than like out here. And so instead of filling in with long lines, because that looks sort of sloppy, what I do is I do kind of shorter lines because they're easier to control. And I could put those lines really close to each other. And then I kind of just overlap it. So I kind of think of doing it like in a patch. So I do like a group of lines. And then I just kind of, that same length, I just kind of like overlap it. And so when I have to fill large areas, this is my approach usually. Rather than doing lines from top to bottom to fill the whole thing. And if I put like a slightly different angle on each group of lines, each patch of them, then it kind of, and I think about like how they would sit like in the form, that kind of works as like planes. So if you think of the the low poly project, how you're looking at planes to kind of describe the forms. It's the same kind of thing with the hatching, except you're doing it all with lines. So in this way, you're not thinking of like each individual line, you're thinking of taking out a plane with like a group of lines. So each plane can be represented by a group of lines. So, it starts to get like some planes in here. And again, if I want to push it back, I could go one direction over all of them. Right? Or if I need to get darker, I could just keep overlapping. Like I want to have it kind of darker at the bottom here or kind of through the middle. I could just do another set. And another thing I find helpful is when I'm cross-hatching, what I like to do is, so the difference in hatching and cross-hatching, right? So hatching is like when all the lines are going one direction, kind of like how they are right now. But when cross-hatching, you know, it means the lines are crossing up. So I did these going this way. When I do my next layer, I'll go any other angle except like exactly perpendicular. So if these are going this way, I'm not going to go this way because that tends to flatten it out. So what I'll do is, if I'm going this way, maybe I'll just alter it a little bit. And then I could kind of work my way around and kind of like get back to like the idea of like cross contour, but with like these lines. And this way I could show forms that are like starting to get kind of rounded. Right, it makes a difference too whether you're doing your lines, like your groups of lines, like either in individual lines where you put them down, pick up, right? You put the pen down, do a line, pick it up, do another line, versus keeping your pen down and going back and forth and getting kind of like a zigzag. Like it tends to look a little more controlled and a little neater if you're picking up after each line, rather than leaving your pen down, right? So just little things that kind of help out like the look of hatching and cross hatching. So all right, so I got some good darks there. This area gets kind of darker. It's real subtle, so just lightly put it in. And then, yeah, you don't have to go straight in with pen. If you want, excuse me, if you want, you could kind of do what I did here, and you could sketch out with a pencil first where the contours are, or even like the shading. You could put in basic shading with the pencil first, and then ink over it. And then afterwards, right, you could come back and you could erase. And the pen won't erase, but the pencil will. So you'll just be left with kind of like just your pen marks, right? And you won't have your pencil contour lines anymore. So that works with that. But yeah, let me kind of just get the rest of this in so we can kind of hit it with the spray paint. All right, then let me get some. Okay, So I'm pretty much ready to spray paint now. So, okay. So when you spray paint, you don't want to be super close. So if I kind of turn my sketchbook this way, right, like this would be way too close. I want to start maybe about a foot, like a foot apart from my surface, and so I'm misting it, because the way it works is, you know, it comes out like a cone. So the closer you are to the surface when you spray, like the heavier it's going to go on, the darker it's going to be. The further you are, the lighter it's going to be. So it's always easier to kind of start out really light and work your way towards the dark, just like kind of like using ink or watercolor. Once it's dark, you know, but that way if you start light, you can work up to that dark. So I'm going to spray this flat down so it's easier for the camera to see, but what I recommend is kind of standing it up when you do it and spray kind of upright. So you want to shake your can, I would say, for a couple minutes. I've already kind of shook this a little bit. And then also, before you start spraying your project, have maybe another piece of paper to do a little test spray. So I'm just going to go to this page in my sketchbook. And so you see, the further away, lighter, the closer I am, the darker it is. So you want to be sort of further away. That's kind of what you're going for. So, all right there. Okay, so I wanted to get a really transparent, almost wash like over this. So I'm gonna spray kind of from a distance, and this is about a foot away from it. And I'm moving the can, so when I press down, I'm pulling the can across like that, because if I leave it stationary, I'll get a mark. But if I press it and move the can, the movement is kind of like this. When I spray it, I'm pulling it back a little bit. So, like, let's do this little corner over here. Let's see, maybe more upright. So this is kind of closer than I want to be, but just to get it in the picture. So when I spray, see, it's going on darker because I'm sort of closer, but yeah. So that's what I want to do. I want to just darken up the area so you can still see, you know, still see how through there. But now instead of like black lines on white paper, it's almost like black lines on gray paper. So maybe we'll just hit a little bit more kind of on this side, so it gets a little darker on the right. All right. So that's pretty much all you need for the spray paint. You don't need to go crazy with that. So this next part, so you want to let this dry for a little bit. This one's water-based, so I got to let it dry a little bit longer than I usually would. So the quick color, this one, you know, this is a spray enamel. This one's really fast drying compared to water-based. This is really good paint, the water-based. It, you know, thins with water, but because it's water-based, it takes longer to dry. So I just have to let it sit a little while longer. But yeah, just as long as you have black spray paint, that's all that matters. And you could also go the other direction. So you could also have like a can of white spray. And so if you wanted to put kind of a black wash on it, you could use a black spray paint. But then if you wanted like a light source, you could use white on it too. So, and then, so I have like a can of white spray. I might do that too. But yeah, this is the same one, the water-based one. But the quick color comes in black and white, and they're both like $1 each. So again, I recommend getting the matte ones. Let me grab some acrylic paint. Be right back. So any acrylic paint will work. You could also use like white gouache, white watercolor if it's thick enough would work. White acrylic is the best though because it's gonna dry waterproof. It's gonna be opaque. So I just have this one. This is just like a little tube of white paint. White house paint would also work. So if you had to go to Home Depot and you need white paint, you could get the little guys. I think I have one. The little samples of so this is like a little sample one. So to compare, show you like the size, right? Like this is a regular can, right? And then this is the sample. So one of these would be fine, but yeah, any white paint. If you already been doing some art and you have some any kind of white acrylic, that would work. So so now with the white paint, I'm gonna pull out the highlights. So I'm going to house face here. There's some highlights on her beak. And these can be layered. You don't have to do, I mean, what I would say is like first thing you probably should do is the pen drawing, but you don't have to have all the pen drawing done. So you can do, most of it done. Then you can do your spray paint and you can do your white highlights, but then you could always come back and say you need more darks. Then you could come back in and do more work with the pen. And then maybe you go too far and you could take your spray paint and push it all back again. And like I said, you could use black and white if you want. So like say this got too dark and I wanted some white in there, I could spray it with white, kind of do like a white wash over everything. You see how like it's starting to look a little like 3D now? Just having some white highlights on it. So I'm pulling, it's kind of like doing the white color pencil on the black paper, but this is gray, so it's not as stark, but but this is the technique, so this is even though it's I'm using paint, I'm sort of using it like a drawing tool, like just the same way I did with the pen. Instead of doing a collection of lines, I'm doing like a collection of strokes to kind of to get my planes in there. So it's the same technique, just a different tool to this. So of course paint's gonna react differently than the pen. It's a much thicker, but it's still going with with individual marks. So instead of like, I'm not filling in the whole thing completely white. I'm letting like the gray and the black kind of show through. I'm not using really long strokes for this. They're all pretty short and choppy. So I'm kind of getting small planes of it. But let's say I did want like a really light area, like let's say by this side of the head. So I could paint out the background. So I can get kind of a light background by her head on this side. So I'll put in the edge pretty strong and then kind of just blend it over. And then maybe on this side I'll put a light background also. So I first put in that background just almost the same way I did with the pen, like with a dotted line or dashed line, like edges. And then I'll blend it out. And so I want to keep this edge where the light hits the form, the background hits the form, but then blend out these areas as it goes out into the space. So blend it into this space. And then kind of keep it up as it comes around here. All right, and then this is about the point where, yeah, that's drying the beak. So I put in those light parts. I could now layer it again with pen. Make the eyes maybe a little bit darker. So if the gray kind of obstructed some of those lines, you can't really see them anymore, I can go back in with a pen and just go right over the white paint. So like I can have like a chunky highlight right here, put a couple thin lines on it and kind of chop it up a little bit. So anywhere where the light got to be too strong, right, I could do some more pen to kind of make it blend in. So what you're looking through is like layers of dark of the pen, gray of the spray paint, and white of the paint. And you could use it, you could layer this as many times as you need, just to get your picture to look finished. All right, so at the end you don't really have a drawing, you don't really have a painting, you just kind of have a picture. Some lines in between those feathers. And so the white I did on this edge kind of made it a little too clean. So I'm coming back with the pen lines just to make it look fuzzier. So same thing on this side, like maybe looks a little too clear. So I'm kind of roughing up the edge. All right, so that's it. So again, pen first, spray paint, use this one, spray paint second, and then white acrylic third, and then after that it's whatever you need. More pen, more spray paint, more white acrylic, just until you're done. All right, so that's the Aquatint.